You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
WCYTV.
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. Really good to be with you this evening because we have a heap of news and it is all about pressing the panic alarm, everything is burning down button over on the left side of the aisle. Now, I'm going to do you a favor right here up front, and I'm going to go out of order. So right on the screen graphic right now is a graphic that has been uploaded quite recently showing that in February, Democrats were enjoying a more sizable lead in the generic congressional ballot than Republicans were. And now, ever so slightly, in the middle of a war and high gas prices, in the middle of what people are not particularly jubilant about with Republicans, they are gaining ground very quickly on the Democrats. And this has led to an article from Politico that I really was not expecting that I would be reading. It is called, it is an exclusive from Politico. It's by Holly Otterbein. I've read her work before. I think Holly is a good DC correspondent for Politico. She's probably right up there for me with Adam Wren. Just to clarify, I know that Politico has some stinkers. These two aren't. Schumer is doing damage control, and it isn't working. The Senate Minority Leader and his aides in recent days have been talking privately with liberal groups in an apparent effort to ease tensions after sparking a civil war in the Democrat Party over a stopgap funding bill, according to 5 people familiar with the conversations. Now, after reading this, I did one thing. I texted a friend of mine in the DNC central office and asked if this is true. I know that Ken Martin had distanced himself, the chair of the DNC, Mr. Minnesota Democrat Farmer Labor Party man, distanced himself from old Chuckles Schumer. So is it true? Is there really an open civil war? According to both the polling, last night's special primary election stuff, and then, of course, the massive disaster fire happening for the left over on Capitol Hill. Yes, and then some. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer has dug himself one of the deepest holes possible because he has bet all of his chips on keeping Department of Homeland Security from being funded with standing against one of the most popular pieces of voter legislation in modern American history. This being the Save America Act, trying to get voter ID through the Senate. So let's go into how Schumer's actually doing some of the melting down. Because these polls are not just bad on that side. According to the YouGov and The Economist, Democrats are currently enjoying only a 43% to Republicans' 41% on the generic congressional, meaning who do you want to be in control of Congress? Democrats 43%, Republicans only 41%. Democrats have lost 2 points since the last YouGov poll. Allow me to explain. In February the 16th, about February 16th, Democrats were up 7 points. March the 2nd, they were only up 4. March 9th, they were only up 3. March 16th, that being 2 days ago, they are only up 2 points. Things aren't looking too good. And here's why. First of all, because Chuck Schumer says the quiet part out loud, because he's a doddering fool who has no idea what his words are coming out of his mouth hole. Reminder, this is the same guy who gets out in front of the public and says,
people are aroused. I haven't seen people so aroused in a very, very long time. What did he say? People are aroused. I haven't seen people so aroused in a very, very long time.
That guy. So the man who says people are aroused, they're passionate, they're simply, I'm not going to say some of the other words that he's used. But alas, before we erect a monument to Chuck Schumer's awkward verbal foibles, he also says the quiet part out loud when it comes to voter ID and why Democrats really do not want that to be a nationalized standard.
The core of the bill is handing the voter rolls over to DHS, putting them through an algorithm designed by Moj and Musk that supposedly knocks out illegal immigrants from voting. But the evidence is almost no illegal immigrants vote. You
see how quickly he stumbles like, oh no, I've just said the thing. Schumer getting out and right off the top of the bat, right out in front saying, man, the Department of Homeland Security wants to take these voter rolls and they want to check to make sure that people are citizens. That means they're going to scrub a bunch of people off. Uh-oh. Whoops. Now, don't get me wrong. He's not just talking on the Senate floor and screwing over Democrats' chances and making people like Gretchen Whitmer and Elisa Slotkin up in Michigan, John Fetterman in Pennsylvania, who is now trying to thread some needle on I just want the bill to be kind of clean, sort of. I don't want you to mess in with mail-in ballots, which that's not going to happen. John Ossoff, even in Georgia, is starting to sweat bullets. So what else is he doing? Well, it's presser time, boys and girls. You got to get to FedEx Kinko's at the Capitol, print the biggest poster that you can find, and then you get out there and you hold yourselves a little rally. Again, in the middle of a complete split, according to the polling, in the Democrat Party.
It's cold outside, but we are fiery in our determination.
Oh no, here we go. The passionate language, Chuck again. And then all 5 people he paid to stand behind him and wave the signs. Yikes.
To beat this awful, despicable, un-American bill. You know, look what's going on. War, an evil war.
Oh, not just any war, an evil war. Ooh, is it an evil war? A war that is entirely evil. The evil war. The war of evil.
Is consuming the Middle East. Prices are skyrocketing everywhere, from gas to groceries.
Gas prices are absolutely high. 100%. We'll let him. Then he says groceries. Again, some grocery prices are up, some are down.
Job growth in America is weakening as Trump tanks our economy. These are all things that bother average Americans.
Now, that's true. What he said right there, that these issues, so when we're talking about employment, when we're talking about the economy at large, when we're talking about consumer sentiment and motivation, when we're talking about home buying and home building, we're talking about energy prices, when we're talking about transportation costs, which is different than just talking about gas prices, also the cost to fix your car and the labor that goes into it and the roads and the way that infrastructure is built. Those are issues that matter to Americans. The reason this is doing absolutely nothing for Chuck Schumer is because his party, all the way from the tippy top of the Senate, with Chuckles Schumer and Richard Blumenthal and Mazie Hirono and Cory Booker, all the way down to the bottom of the House, that one weird new lady they have from Colorado, and Jasmine Crockett, just asking questions. All over the Democrat Party, not one bill that would do anything to lower any cost anywhere. The only thing they kind of have is Bernie Sanders and the affordable health care by making you do the same thing that didn't work at all forever in the Soviet Union. It's a terrible idea. It's not going to work, but you got to do it. So that's all they have. And so when you come to the American people and you go, I'm mad, Americans go, great, what's new? That's on every screen all day, all the time. What do you have to fix it? What do you have that's new? And, in Pixar Disney's Ratatouille, when the question, what is new, is asked to the kitchen, it stirs the kitchen into complete and utter chaos. In the same way, the Democrat Party, when being asked to give something of substance, does Schumer provide a bill here? No, really, I'm not joking. Look.
And what is Trump and the MAGA Republicans focused on?
Just whining about Trump. Honey, Rachel Maddow's been doing the over, and I don't just mean a little bit. Americans are facing the brunt in 2 different ways here. 2 different ways here right now that we see Democrats really annoying Americans. With the Department of Homeland Security shutdown, and then with the Save America Act. So let's dive into this kind of thing and why it matters, what's kind of the deal here. First of all, the Democrats today blocked a stopgap funding measure that all that was the plan to do, the only thing that was necessary for the Democrats in this case was just to fund the Department of Homeland Security for just 2 weeks. Just 2 simple weeks, that's all. Nothing else. Problem still there at the end. Americans are again in eternally long lines at airports. TSA is shut down. Americans feel less safe after 4 Islamic terror attacks in the last month. There's a problem here. And so what does Schumer lead the Democrats to do? Well,
Senator, if he would modify his request, so the Senate proceed immediately to consideration of calendar number 156 HR 4553, which is a 2-week continuing resolution for Homeland Security. I ask that Senator Warnock would substitute his amendment number 4353 to be considered and agreed to. The bill be amended, be considered, read a 3rd time, passed, and the motions to reconsider be considered, made, laid upon the table.
So the Republicans push forward an idea. Sorry, radio crew, we're going to send you guys over to the commercial side of things, and we are going to continue on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. I'm getting a couple of messages that there's maybe an audio issue. On our end, everything is reading green. It might be a YouTube blip. They had a small outage on Tuesday of last week. This may be the same. A refresh of the screen might be the manner and method that might set things okay. So that all said, what do the Democrats do? Just a simple 2 weeks. 2 weeks to fund DHS. That's all. Just for TSA and for Border Patrol and for the Coast Guard. Silence.
Does the senator so modify his request?
I object.
Uh-oh.
Objection is heard to the modification. Is there objection to the original request?
Painfully so, Mr. President, I do object.
Mr. President?
The objection is heard. Senator from Georgia.
Let me be very clear.
Oh, no, it's Reverend Raphael Warnock, the Democrat senator, the man of morals who's supposed to ache for the weeping and the hurting and the sorrowful. Wow. Gee whiz. Oh, certainly he's going to say something good here.
Our differences here are differences in principle.
Oh, so Warnock objects. Democrats block the motion to just fund the DHS 2 weeks. Just 2 weeks. Our objections here are on principle, and also screw those TSA workers. Good job. Just way to go. Stellar stuff. Very, very fine. Very fine indeed. Now, hang on, because it does, unfortunately for them, get worse. It has now gotten so bad for the Democrat Party, they are resorting to asking Jimmy Kimmel on late night TV to run the exact same message over and over. And the same message is the same that hasn't worked yet, that has been debunked repeatedly. Donald Trump is trying to steal the elections by requiring voter identification, by proving you're a citizen of the United States. That's going to wreck everything. Jimmy Kimmel has now gone into a huge opening monologue, Mr. Funny Man Evening Good Time Show, right? All of that. In 1 week, Jimmy Kimmel has now made his opening major monologue this kind of garbage.
Trump wants to make it as difficult for Democrats to vote as he possibly can under the guise of stopping voter fraud, even though there is no meaningful voter fraud. There is no evidence that anyone can. More Americans were eaten by wolves last year than voted fraudulently. This is about fixing the election. He made a big mess in Iran. It looks like we bombed a school, and he's lying about it. There are 3-hour lines at the airport because Democrats want ICE agents to follow the same rules every other law enforcement officer has to follow. His poll numbers are abysmal. The price of gas is going through the roof. And, of course, there's that little matter of those allegations in the Trump-Epstein files. And so to protect himself from losing the Senate and the House.
You see, like the weird, awkward wait until you get to the laughter there? So there you go. That's it. They're going to keep trying the Epstein files thing, although the more people they bring to testify before the House, the worse it looks for that particular theory. So they bring him out. Then he comes out and does the exact same thing again yesterday. The Will Cain show sent us this clip over today.
This SAVE Act, this is nothing more than his attempt to hijack this upcoming election. It doesn't protect your right to vote. It does the opposite. It makes voting so difficult, a lot of people won't bother to do it, which is what he wants.
If you're explaining to this degree, you're losing. If you're explaining, you're losing. Now, just calling something the Save America Act doesn't in and of itself make it a virtuous thing. Congress names things like the Save All Puppies and legalize hugs for the friendly acts all the time. That's their game. But when you have to explain why voter ID is bad, and you start off by the classic line that, well, black people are too poor and dumb to do it, and then that's like, good Lord, maybe that shouldn't be your line. And then women are too stupid to do it. Okay. And then, well, it's going to purge the illegals from the voter rolls and all of the bedridden people that already don't register to vote in person. Then how are they going to register to vote? Again, not real good. We got to bring the radio crew back from commercial, and then we get to Cuba. Oh no. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Don't go anywhere.
The Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back. Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Things are not so hot for the communist regime down in Cuba. And so just like the Democrat Party, they're pulling out all the stops and they are going to the Jimmy Kimmel of Cuba. That's right. The Jimmy Kimmel of the socialist progressive Bernie Sanders movement is everyone's favorite high school dropout, Greta Thunberg, whose freedom flotillas have now done a grand total of absolutely nothing. Well, again, don't let me stop you from hearing the news straight from the horse's mouth. Greta Thunberg.
We need to talk about what's happening in Cuba right
We need to talk about what's happening with your hair, but we'll save that for later.
now. As the Trump administration is waging illegitimate wars across the world, killing countless of people.
Okay, so aside from the fact that she can't speak English, the illegitimate war thing, okay, I understand that there is a Catholic concept of a just war that is really only relegated to a kind of Catholic ideal. Even in the Protestant community, it was really diminished quite seriously throughout the Reformation. What in the world is an illegitimate war? What is this, like a war with mistresses? What are you talking about? I hear this all the time, like illegitimate war, illegal war. Ooh. Because just saying war lost its flavor. Just like how they stopped saying racist and they just go to Nazi. It lost its savor there. You got to salt it up with something new. But it's killing countless of people. How many of the people killed? Countless.
It is also strangling the Cuban people.
Okay, now, if we're going to talk about the illegitimate wars here, what's going on with Iran is not strangling the Cuban people. What's going on with the Venezuela thing is not strangling the Cuban people. It is strangling the unfettered oil imports, blocking international sanctions from Venezuela to Cuba. That's entirely different. It just doesn't ring the same politically.
Deliberately, methodically, and openly. The pedophile Trump himself bragged.
Here we go. We're going to try to tie the Epstein files into it to give it a little extra Alex Jones kind of flavor here. It's really exciting.
About it, saying there's an embargo, there's no oil, there's no money, there's no anything. He said it like it was something to be proud of.
To be absolutely clear, embargoing communist regimes and watching them fall is absolutely something to be proud of. God bless the United States of America. You don't like it, go cry. Enjoy it. So what are they actually doing of substance? Well, Progressive International has announced that they are leaving their sweaty, deodorantless protests behind. They are tired of gluing themselves to fine art in the Louvre. They are now sailing again. Freedom Flotilla 3. The Fast and the Flotilla. No longer sailing to Gaza because, now that the war there is pretty much over, screw them. Instead, now that Israel's not going to stop them from delivering munitions and supplies to Hamas, now they're sailing to Cuba. So they've got boxes with index cards on them of flags from all around the world. It's exciting. Pride and Progress flags adorning boxes. Because that's what the Cuban people need right now. Sex toys. Way to go, Greta Thunberg. Announcing the Nuestra America Flotilla. We are sailing to Cuba, bringing critical humanitarian aid for its people. Together, we can break the siege, save lives, and stand up for the cause of Cuban self-determination. I do love how self-determination only actually comes up as some kind of a concept for the left whenever it's politically convenient for them. I will remind you that super duper recently, and by super duper recently, I mean 2 days ago, major super duper socialist Zoran Mamdani was asked how he felt about Irish self-determination, and the man froze immediately. Has no idea what he's talking about. Here was that again, self-determination, a selective thing just 2 days ago.
Nations are. On Ireland, you've talked about the importance of self-determination and international law. Do you support a united Ireland?
I got to be honest, I haven't thought enough on that question. I have to say, though, that
So this is where politicians would say, I have to say, though, that and then they would say a principle. I support, and here's where you would say, but I do support self-determination of any culture and people. Oh, he can't say that. He doesn't believe in the self-determination of cultures and peoples. He's pushing policy right now in New York City that if you live in a predominantly Irish heritage neighborhood, you're getting taxed more because he thinks that's too white. So self-determination, really only for people who are going to prop up socialist regimes. Now, if you think this is enough to actually turn things around, come on, everyone watching the show, you know that a little progressive international flotilla of some floating rainbow rubber duckies to Cuba is not actually going to do anything to stop the State Department and future Emperor Liberator Supreme Marco Rubio from liberating that entire island or allowing the communist regime to collapse and then American Cubans go and reconquer Cuba to be a wonderful 51st state. But in that particular vein of things, the President of the United States and the President of Cuba are both out here with some exciting new footage. They're actually posturing now before the international community, by which I mean they're either answering questions or commenting about the situation in Cuba on camera. The President of the United States, again yesterday, making it clear, we might have to do a little something with Cuba soon. You know, I've been itching for a Cubano, and Miami's just don't quite cut it.
Well, Cuba right now is in very bad shape. They're talking to Marco, and we'll be doing something with Cuba very soon.
Mr. President.
We're really focused on this, but we're dealing with Cuba. Marco, do you want to say a couple of words about it?
That is offering a softball pitch to Babe Ruth. Marco, do you want to embarrass everyone else in this room with the laser light glowing from your eyes radioactively?
Yeah, I mean, Cuba has an economy that doesn't work and a political and governmental system. They can't fix it. So they have to change dramatically. What they announced yesterday is not dramatic enough. It's not going to fix it. So they've got some big decisions to make over there.
But Secretary.
So what you noticed right there are very clear, concise. It's the disappointed rhetoric, the disappointed parent rhetoric, where he says, here's what's going on. Their government sucks. They screw over their people. They're bad for the international community. The Western Hemisphere is ours. Maybe. And then the media pivots over to talking to Marco.
Rubio, do you support, and I know this is up to Congress, but do you support easing the trade embargo if you get more cooperation from Havana?
Well, I'm not going to discuss what we would talk about or not. Suffice it to say that the embargo is tied to political change on the island.
Fantastic. Fantastic. You don't show your card. This weird idea. There are two prevailing ideas in America right now that are really silly, and those with common sense are calling them out more by the polling data every day. These are, number one, it's the instant gratification where everything should take 3.5 minutes. In the time that it takes me to microwave a Hot Pocket, every situation around the world should be immediately resolved. Because after all, I can do all of this stuff with tech via entertainment, so why doesn't politics work that way? That would be number one. And number two is this idea that the United States government, all the way from the most secretive of operations diplomatically with the State Department, militarily with the Department of War, or economically with the Department of the Treasury and the Department of Commerce, should be revealed to you and I, who are not in government, have not been elected to these positions, and also the rest of the world, because the internet is kind of a thing. And then foreign leaders can then watch those inner secrets and know exactly where the United States is going to give up. And they don't like it. People in the United States are no longer satisfied with those who are complaining constantly. But Trump said this 5 minutes ago. Yeah, I mean, he's not revealing his cards of what he's actually doing. You end up finding out about it via an American flag picture tweet after it's happened. And if Congress doesn't like that, Congress can take that power back from the executive. But until they choose to do that, womp freaking womp. So we're going to send the radio crew over to the commercial, and then we have Presidente Diaz-Canel. He's also panicking. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, again, on the live stream, you watch this live, there's no commercials for you. You come back to the show later. YouTube does, unfortunately, throw in some commercials here and there. You listen on the radio, you watch on TV, you get commercials. You don't get that here. We hang out here and I share with you the panic of a man who is having a muy mal kind of dia. Presidente Diaz-Canel has now resorted to the most true strength that you can have. Tweeting one thing via just text and then accidentally showing a video on camera where he is truly terrified of his own people, like all communist regimes are. Posturing in the public, doing whatever you have to do, exporting all of the food to say, oh, we're not having a famine at home here. Everything's fine. Oh, sure, everything. We're going to send these troops, these Soviet troops down to Afghanistan. Everything's fine here. That's a bad decision from communist regimes. They haven't learned how. So first of all, Miguel Diaz-Canal Bermudez sent out a tweet. I'm translating he says, the U.S. publicly threatens Cuba almost daily with overthrowing the constitutional order by force. And it uses an outrageous pretext, the harsh limitations of the weakened economy that they have attacked and sought to isolate for more than 6 decades. Why is it weakened? I thought you were super duper wonderful and amazing. Why aren't you winning other countries over to your side? Are you really suggesting the United States has single-handedly convinced the entire world to stand against you, or are you just really bad at doing what you do? Oh wait, the United States wiped all of your super ultra especial forces when we captured Maduro with no casualties. Oh, anyway, he says they intend and announce plans to seize the country, its resources, its properties, and even the very economy they seek to strangle to make us surrender. Only in this way can the fierce economic war be explained, which applied as collective punishment against the entire people. There's the classic socialisty collective punishment garbage. In the face of the worst scenario, Cuba is accompanied by a certainty. Any external aggressor will clash with an impregnable resistance. Hashtag, which hashtags haven't been used anywhere, anytime at all for at least 4 years. So in the most, and forgive me boomers, I'm going to use a boomer joke here. In the most boomer social media way possible, hashtag Cuba está firme. Cuba is firm. That's great. So aside from Chuck Schumer style jokes about how firm the president of Cuba is, on video, he's a lot less impressive. Here he is pleading with the people currently on strike and without power and are tired of communist promises and bullcrap. Please, guys, you're wonderful.
Se está haciendo lo imposible. Nadie puede imaginar, yo no soy capaz de
Look at this man. That is a wilted, broken man pleading. Please don't stick my head in a guillotine. Please don't throw me out of a helicopter. Oh, please, Cuban people, don't give me what I have coming. He says the impossible is being done. During his press appearance, he made a heartfelt acknowledgement of the workers at the Union Electrica. He says, quote, who are titans. Please, you're titans. You're wonderful. You're imprestamente. Please don't overthrow my regime. Yeah, the protests, by the way, now in Cuba have risen from the dozens to the hundreds. The communist regime is not gaining control over this. None. There's no chance that the Cuban communist regime can recover from this at this point. If the president of the United States accomplishes in seeing the Cuban regime fall due to his pressure during the administration, it will be one of the greatest accomplishments of any administration in foreign policy in the history of this country. Now, that does bring us to the committee hearings, believe it or not. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. We got to bring that radio crew.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. We've talked about Cuba really struggling, again, not just with the United States. After all, Costa Rica declared today that the Cuban embassy in Costa Rica is to evacuate immediately all of the diplomats and citizens of Cuba, which there are very few citizens abroad from Cuba, but in Costa Rica are now to be considered persona non grata. The diplomatic way of saying, get out right now. You are not welcome here. You are no longer a real country. Latin American countries that are supposed to be standing in solidarity with the communist regimes that used to kind of hang out with Venezuela. Again, now you have the vice president of Venezuela, which is singing to President Trump's tune, especially via oil infrastructure. And of course, when you're looking at Cuba, well, now we get to some of the committee nonsense because Congress is starting to weigh in on some of these things. They are kind of humiliating themselves in the process. And there were four big, huge slamma-mamma-jamma committee hearings that aired on not just C-SPAN, but Forbes. Yeah, that's right. Producer Josiah today couldn't even find all the committee hearings on C-SPAN. Instead, we had to resort to using, that's right, the incredible TV network Forbes to get you some of these big hearings. And again, what are these congressional hearings? What usefulness do they have? They are political campaign advertisements for people in Congress. People in Congress, the Republicans, the Democrats, the left and the right, will get into these committee hearings. C-SPAN will start rolling, whether it's C-SPAN 1, 2, 3, or ESPN 8, the Ocho. They will start rolling, and then the earrings come off, and they get in a bunch of huge fights, and they start yelling back and forth, and how dare you, sir, and don't you know, and all this other nonsense. Well, of these 4 committee hearings today, one that we're going to be getting to later involves some foreign conversation regarding national security, Iran, Cuba, Venezuela. One led off with by Jasmine Crockett, who does not know where Venezuela is on a map. Well, neither does AOC, but she didn't give the introductory speech to this particular committee. The House Foreign Affairs Committee and Judiciary Subcommittee on Oversight. This is where we got to see, right off the top of the bat, a lot of preening for the cameras. Jasmine Crockett, she gets out there. She wants to impress you, to dazzle you. Again, in a Foreign Affairs Committee oversight, here's how she decides to kick off this particular hearing.
There's this little thing called the Epstein files.
You need to leave.
Guys, all right, look. Just how they try to keep making fetch happen, as our friend of the show, Ben Shapiro, says, just as though they continually try to keep trotting out this old dead horse at this point. This ain't going to win you the elections. This ain't going to drive people out for the Democrats. It's a foreign policy committee hearing. The Epstein thing ain't working here. It ain't. It is very so much unemployed. But alas.
There's a lot of people that have been found liable, charged, all kinds of stuff, from Prince Andrew and Peter Mandelson, from Norwegian officials, the former prime minister.
For what? What were the charges? They do kind of matter if you're going to make the case.
And the former ambassador, all these different people, right?
The former ambassador. I love that. Just any ambassador, just the former ambassador. The ambassador from where to where, she has no idea. She doesn't list the charges either. The charges these people are being brought up with right now are selling state secrets to people like Epstein that he would use for financial blackmail, and essentially to then, through Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein would use his financial capital, then through Ghislaine Maxwell, would then traffic kids to himself. That's what we know. That's what all of the evidence, the actual concrete, substantial evidence, and all the way over from Prince Andrew over to the billionaires, the trading of state secrets in exchange for financial and sexual favors appear to be the thing. That Trump said, hey, you need to look into Ghislaine Maxwell, by the way. She's like pimping people to Epstein, as was the call made. Crockett instead is going to completely jump the shark here to make the Foreign Affairs Committee about this.
Some would argue, especially since there was international trafficking that was taking place.
There you go. All right. See, it's foreign affairs because it's international trafficking. Yes. Thank you, Turtleneck and Blazer. I'm so glad Night at the Roxbury is bringing this one around.
Argue that our president, whose name is found over and over and over and over in these files.
You know what? You want to know something kind of interesting, something kind of cool? Did you know that no one says the name Darth Vader in Star Wars more than the rebels? So therefore the rebels, they must be evil because they said the name Darth Vader all the time. See, that's proof. In fact, you know what? You know the only book, in fact, the very first book to name the devil is the Bible. Therefore the devil must have written the Bible. Oh, we got him. Don't be stupid. Don't be stupid like this. It's how you lose Senate primaries in Texas.
May have engaged in, say, child trafficking.
I do love what the comments are pointing out. She has to continue returning to her notes because she's bad at this. Again, Foreign Affairs Committee starts off real strong, excellent, exciting, super thrilling. Love it. She does sort of bend this around eventually to trying to make the case that Donald Trump uses his Epstein connections to make it really easy on the drug trafficking community.
International drug traffickers love Donald Trump because they know that even if they are arrested, it's easy enough to get a pardon from him.
Again, to this point, to this day, there is one pardon that received a lot of condemnation and is very likely to end with additional charges that could, in fact, result in this particular drug trafficker getting the death penalty on the back end. Just a little fun fact here there for you. That's from the DOJ, for instance. But on this particular matter, though, you do realize that she is one of the people who has spent the last several months crying into her pillow on CNN, on MS Now, in Congress, because we were blasting via Tomahawks, via JDAMs, via AGMs, air-to-ground missiles, all of these lovely drug trafficking boats out of places like Venezuela. And not just in Venezuela, but over in the Pacific as well. This dog doesn't hunt. Americans don't think that Donald Trump is helping to stimulate drug trafficking. It is kind of the antithesis. He's talked about fentanyl quite a bit. Doesn't work here.
The data shows that Donald Trump is one of the most pro-drug trafficking presidents in modern day history.
According to whom?
Since he took office, prosecutions for drug trafficking have fallen to the lowest levels in decades because the agents tasked with going after drug cartels have either been fired or forced to start raiding your local Home Depot. Or
here's the problem. She's a bold-faced liar because Americans have been peppered. If there is one thing that you can say about the PR strategy of getting kind of the camera forward members of the administration out to the public, it is that they do not miss an opportunity to brag to you, as they should, when there is a successful operation. For example, FBI Director Kash Patel has thrown all of his weight into an all-out war against sex trafficking and drug trafficking. The example from, today.
The counter-narcotic mission can't be complete without state and local law enforcement. So we are embedding more task force officers across the country on the specific counter-narcotics mission. We've also stood up with our interagency partners in Tucson, Arizona, the Southern Border Intelligence Center, specifically on the counter-narcotic mission so that we can utilize the Department of War and interagency capabilities on the law enforcement front. That's why we seized enough fentanyl in 2025 to kill 178 million Americans. That's a 31% increase year over year. And here's a statistic that everybody should be proud of. Opioid overdose deaths from last year dropped 20 points.
I'm going to stop the clip just now because he goes on for another 2 minutes reciting a series of successful moves by the FBI, by the DEA, by the DOJ and the Department of Homeland Security, before Democrats shut it down, in general, that do in fact show substantive, objective measures for protecting the American people. And this is where Democrats miss the mark. This is where they miss the mark. Where they should be attacking right now. Sorry, I know you really shouldn't, help an individual who is as dumb as that while they're down, but just give a little bit of advice here. Going after Trump would be the disappointed parent routine. If you're going to do it effectively, saying he had all of these promises. He said all of this was going to come true, and his eyes were bigger than his stomach and he didn't deliver. That would be an argument you could make if you had something waiting in the wings, say an Ezra Klein abundance model, where you said, hey, look, he let all of these data centers build places. Now the electricity grid is stretched to its limit. Well, that would also require the left then saying we need more nuclear plants. They're not going to do that. It's not effective. They could go that route, but it requires them to have a plan. On the contrary, what are they doing instead? The left's entire strategy is saying, well, Donald Trump is actually a super duper time traveling, racist, xenophobic, ultra pedophile from Zapulon 5, who's sending us all to die, our 18th death, from climate change sexismophobia. And he wants to slaughter the trans children of Iran and probably nuke Greenland. That sick, twisted fool. All right, radio crew, we're going to send you off to the commercial break. Be on the lookout for sick, twisted, super, ultra evil from Zepulon 5. It's the Tony Kennett Cast. So that was one committee. Exciting, no? Well, on another committee, because we're going to get to this, we're going to come back to this. There was actually something from this committee that was useful. A good friend of ours who we're going to get to in just a minute, a guy named Franklin from PragerU, testified today on, for example, why the Trump administration's tasks against Venezuela, kind of important. But we're going to go back and talk about the House Judiciary Subcommittee on the Constitution and limited government. Because it is time for Representative Jamie Raskin, whose hairline recedes a little bit more every single time he's on camera. Jamie Raskin has an amazingly huge announcement that is perhaps so stupid that I'm pretty sure I almost saw Chair Comer slap his face into the wooden desk. That would be that Thomas Paine, you know, the guy who wrote Common Sense, Thomas Paine, one of the American revolutionaries, was an undocumented immigrant.
Invoking Tom Paine, who was an undocumented immigrant who came to this land in 1774, 2 years before the revolution, and wrote Common Sense.
The member said, I think his opening sentence was, he said Thomas Paine was an illegal immigrant. My understanding was Mr. Paine was born in the UK, came to America, then a British colony in 1774. So I was just struggling to figure out how he was.
Oh, I didn't say he was an illegal immigrant. I said he was an undocumented immigrant, just like Thomas Jefferson's family was.
Oh, he was undocumented. No. You didn't need permission from the crown, from the British government, to travel to the United States. You didn't need like a leave of the king to come to the British colony of British North America. You didn't need that for any of the colonies. No, there was none of that. Any of the collection of British North America, all the way from Canada down to Georgia, you didn't need anything. So no, he wasn't an undocumented immigrant. That makes no sense at all. Thomas Jefferson's family also not in that way or fashion. No, if you are under this is the same with the idea, oh, Jesus was an illegal immigrant. No, Mary and Joseph were subject to the Roman Empire. They then left from Judea down into the Roman-controlled territory in Egypt. They went from one state to another. And the same with the UK. The British Empire, under His Majesty's royal government, would go from the UK to the British North American colonies. Don't be dumb. Don't be dumb. Don't be this kind of dumb. Now, there is one moment that is a truly astonishing moment. Brandon Gill getting a certain left-wing member to admit something rather on point here.
American taxpayers pay for Medicaid for illegal aliens.
In many circumstances, yes.
They should.
Not just American taxpayers, but immigrant taxpayers also pay taxes as well.
Pay for Social
As
Security
you know, sir, there is no
aliens?
exception for tax paying based on immigration status.
I'm the one who's asking questions here. Should American taxpayers pay for Social Security for illegal aliens? It's a yes or no question. I think.
Answer it. You were willing to answer it before? Answer, you said, yeah, they should pay for Medicare and Medicaid for illegals. What about Social Security?
I think the answer is no.
It's not a yes or no question. It doesn't happen. We don't provide Social Security benefits to undocumented.
We're going to come back to that in a second. Instead, we're going to come back to commercial and then dive into something that's pretty good. You're going to like it. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
We'll go over to Franklin Camargo from the Prager University. A lot of stuff to talk about, but of course, Venezuela is still very much in the news, a new series of testimonies before Congress. And Franklin, I believe that they've tapped you to be one of those individuals. Tell us more about it.
Yes, that is correct. I'm very excited. First, let me tell you that this is the American dream in some way, right? Because I escaped Venezuela more than 7 years ago after being accused of terrorism under a so-called law against hatred. And today, I'm going to testify against a real terrorist, Nicolas Maduro. And that is the American dream. And I have something very, very clear that I want to share with the representatives, and I also want to share with you and your audience. At the end, I'm going to be before the U.S. Congress, and I want to explain to Americans how this Operation Absolute Resolve, how the capture of Maduro serves American interests. Because this is not just about Venezuela and how happy Venezuelans are because this criminal, the leader of a mafia, is in federal prison. This is also about how he created a system in place that tried to destabilize the United States and how it serves American interests to put him in prison.
Of course, when you're looking at the major impact, obviously you're someone who's faced, again, being accused of being a terrorist for inciting hate, things like that. Tell us a little bit more about how Maduro's regime tried to target you and so many other Venezuelans. Then, of course, we can move to the destabilization here at home.
Yes. So, well, first, when I first came to America, I was only 6 years old. And I didn't know anything about politics. I didn't know anything about economics, but I understood something very clearly. This country was special. It was different. It was great. I just went to a grocery store and I saw the variety of products, the variety of Oreos. And I was like, I would like my country to be like the United States. And later on, when my country was being destroyed, my family wasn't going to vacations in Disneyland anymore. We're actually concerned about finding food. I said, I have to do something. I have to fight back. I have a natural right to be free, and this government is trying to oppress me. It's oppressing me. So I spoke out. I led peaceful protests. I gave speeches in universities, and I was expelled from college and accused of terrorism. And of course, I'm not a terrorist, let me tell you. But they did that because, of course, they don't want to allow anyone to speak out against the regime. So I had to flee. But not everyone in my family wasn't so lucky. I have a cousin who was tortured and went to prison for 2 years. I have friends. Most of my friends who did like political activism with me were also prosecuted, spent time in prison. And that is the reality of the Venezuelan political situation. It's been the reality for almost 3 decades.
So when you take that and you juxtapose it with how the Maduro administration, or regime, I should say, attempted to destabilize the United States, attempted to infiltrate and cause a lot of chaos in certain aspects of the United States of America, how did that come about? And from your perspective, what have you seen along the progress that has now hopefully been halted?
So first, Nicolas Maduro and Chavez, because let's remember that this revolution started with Chavez. He was also authoritarian. He was a criminal. They turned Venezuela from a democratic country, successful country, stable country, to a criminal network and a mafia, a drug cartel. About 250 tons of cocaine moved through Venezuela each year under the protection of the regime itself, otherwise known as Cartel de los Soles, Cartel of the Suns. 30,000 Americans die from cocaine overdoses every single year. So it is a big deal. But Maduro's crimes were not only related to drug trafficking. They established an official criminal network of sending violent criminals to the United States to destabilize the country. Tren de Aragua, for instance. We're talking about criminals, people who committed, were responsible for sexual assaults, armed robberies, and the vicious murders of young ladies like Lakin Riley or Jocelyn Nungaray. That's what the Maduro regime did. Now, after Maduro's capture, Venezuela is not a free country. I have to be clear about that. But there is some hope that the current regime, because this is still a regime, can cooperate with the United States, not because they are good people or because they have good intentions, but because they know that the Trump administration can go after them easily, just as they went after Nicolas Maduro. Let's remember, Nicolas Maduro underestimated the U.S. government. He underestimated Trump. He was dancing on a stage. He was challenging Trump. He was telling him, oh, come after me. I'm waiting for you. And now he's spending, and hopefully he's going to spend the rest of his life in New York in a federal prison.
So this brings us to that actual testimony itself. I know that you're testifying. I know that, again, some of our friends and colleagues are also going before Congress to plead certain cases before them. So what is it that you're hoping to achieve? Because obviously we already know that you're going to have a circus of television cameras and I'm sure a bunch of congressmen trying to get their 15 minutes. What are you looking to accomplish?
Look, I have two big goals. One is to explain to the American people that this operation serves American interests. And secondly, I want to debunk the most common arguments that are coming from the left. Arguments like, well, we shouldn't be kidnapping presidents. He wasn't kidnapped. He was captured. He was not a president. He was a drug lord. He was a criminal who occupied a position that was not under the consent of Venezuela. So I want to explain that to the American people. The capture of Nicolas Maduro was not only justified, it was necessary for the security and even for the sovereignty of the United States and the American people.
I got to say, I do admire when someone comes to the country and is more passionately patriotic and American, but again, at home and abroad, than some of the individuals who spend a lot of their days kind of whining in their oatmeal. Really, just to brother to a brother here, really appreciate the perspective that you're bringing. I hope that for your sake and for the sake of the message that you're bringing, Congress keeps some of its normal circus behavior pat down a little bit. Do you expect they will? Are you expecting a couple of questions?
Look, I'm expecting some questions, especially from Democrats. I think they're going to try to question the operation, the legality. And this was not an act of war or a rogue act of aggression. This was a law enforcement operation to protect Americans and to go after a fugitive. Because let's remember that Maduro was indicted in 2020 by the U.S. Department of Justice.
Right.
There was due process. So it is important to highlight. Of course, I'm expecting leftists to hate and dislike what I'm going to say. But this is very clear. This was good for the United States. And you have nothing to thank me about my patriotic sentiment to this country. This country showed me what freedom looks like, and then years later saved my life when I needed it the most. I'm just paying it back, brother. I'm just paying it back because this country is the best in the world. And when I see leftists trying to burn the flag, you know that we would go to protest in Venezuela, and some of us would even carry American flags. Yes, we're in Venezuela. We are Venezuelans, but we would carry the American flag because it has a powerful meaning. It means freedom, something innate in each of us. So that's what we have to fight for every single day.
Franklin Camargo of PragerU. We'll link some of his stuff down in the show's description so you can go follow him, keep an eye on this. And I am sure that we will have clips from these particular testimonies to air on the show pretty soon. Franklin, thanks again.
Thank you.
Now, let's dive in real quick here to some of the rest of the committee news from the day, because then we go over to the Senate side of things. Now, unfortunately, the Senate side of things involved Rand Paul acting like an absolute drama queen. Now, I said yesterday that I wanted one thing particularly out of Mullen's performance today. I wanted him to act like a disappointed parent. I like that. I like it when a politician goes in, they act in charge, they are right to the point, they are clear, correct, they don't play games, they don't just get into silly fights and, well, you're bad and you're evil and you're... It's not about the camera, it's about answering the questions, because what Americans see later... By the way, this is a tactic that I use when I'm debating. During the day, I'm the national correspondent for the Daily Signal. So I go on different shows to debate those on the opposite side of the aisle. And if I can get my opponent in a debate, not in a conversation, but in a debate, if I can get them angry, upset, annoyed, and they start acting like a nutcase, then I've won. All I have to do is sit there smugly and wait for them to mess up, which they will. The disappointed parent routine. You see this, by the way, with Trump. Whenever a reporter will get in his face and freak out, he'll go, "Are you okay? What are you doing? I'm not telling you that." You'll see the same thing whether it's J.D. Vance or whether it's Marco Rubio, or may I throw quite a bit of praise over to the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, on questions about the situation in Iran, the operation, the war there, what's been going on over the last 2.5 weeks. This was Tulsi Gabbard today. Again, look for the attitude and the behavior.
So the assessment of the intelligence community is that Iran's nuclear enrichment program was obliterated by last summer's airstrikes.
Yes.
In the opening statement you submitted to the committee last night also stated, quote, "There has been no effort since then to try to rebuild their enrichment capability," end quote, correct?
That's right.
And that.
So what you're seeing so far, again, he's laying a path here. Again, what you see is he's trying to set up an environment where he can say, so then why did Trump do it if everything was destroyed and fine? Again, this has been explained a number of times, but we're going to go through this now with Tulsi Gabbard. Now, Tulsi could do what a lot of people that appear before the Senate or the House do and go, well, no, your question's wrong. She just quietly, reservedly, clearly answers the question and affirms, knowing that she's not digging herself a grave. She knows what she's going to say. She knows what the points are.
It's the assessment of the intelligence community.
Yes.
The White House stated on March 1st of this year that this war was launched and was, quote, "a military campaign to eliminate the imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime," end quote. That's a statement from the White House. Quote, "the imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime." Was it the assessment of the intelligence community that there was an imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime?
The intelligence community assessed that Iran maintained the intention to rebuild and to continue to grow their nuclear enrichment capability.
Was it the assessment?
So again, what you see here is that she clarified. He asked the question and she says, well, after we destroyed Fordo, again, there were a series of facilities. We still have the old maps, guys. The old maps were like, hey, before Operation Midnight Hammer ever took place, these are the 20-some different places they're attempting to do these things. And then we struck 3 or 4 of those and damaged their ability to enrich uranium at that particular series of facilities, their enrichment facilities. That was the idea. And burying a lot of the fissile, or what was hoping to be their fissile material. And then they said, screw you, we're going to do it anyway. We're not heeding the warning. We're going to keep doing it no matter what. And we're also going to ramp up our ballistic missile program. That alongside a number of other things. Again, this has been explained consistently. She says, look, here's why, here's the context, calmly, to the point, clearly. He starts to get, you can see the vein just start to pop up because it's not the answer that he wants. Because again, committees aren't actually about asking questions. You can go to, if you're a member of the administration and a high enough level, representatives and senators will give you their numbers and office times. You can just call them up and work. We're going to see this later because Mark Wayne Mullen accuses Rand Paul of just doing his big grandstanding today. He's like, dude, I've called you several times to talk about this. You didn't want to do this. You want to stand up and be super big emotional gal in the Senate. And that's why he's upset. He doesn't actually want to talk. He wants to set up a point for him to then charge out and make a big media hullabaloo.
Of the intelligence community that there was a, quote, imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime, yes or no?
Senator, the only person who can determine what is and is not an imminent threat is the president.
False. This is
no.
Worldwide. This is the worldwide threats hearing where you present to Congress national intelligence, timely, objective, and independent of political considerations.
So Ossoff, again, because we talked about Warnock earlier. This is Ossoff. So John Ossoff is starting to get false. He like Dwight Schrutes his way at false. Like bears eat beets. Bears beets. Battlestar Galactica. All right, no, bud. The intelligence community, we have the intelligence community briefings, by the way, from the end of the Obama administration. They say, hey, Mr. President, here's what we see around the world. Here's what we think. You, as the commander-in-chief, I know, amazing. You have to take this intelligence and do things with it. The DNI does not go, okay, Mr. President, here's what you're going to do today. No. If you are a member of the administration, you serve at the pleasure of the president. Now, there are those out there that say, well, I don't like that. They shouldn't, just kind of bow down and do what the president says. Oh, yes, they should. They are in the executive agency. The president is their boss. If you don't like that, and I don't, then Congress needs to take back power from the agencies. It is Congress, through Wilson and Franklin Delano Roosevelt, that abdicated a lot of its power and gave it over to the agencies. And then Lyndon B. Johnson and Jimmy Carter had love affairs with agencies and made sure that they were bigger and worse and more awful and more powerful than any time before in American history. The idea that Tulsi Gabbard recognizes that she serves at the pleasure of the president. I said, yeah, here's the stuff in the manila envelope. Here is the threat that Iran poses. You make the decision. Trump goes, wow, it looks like they're going to have something that's kind of dangerous right around the corner, like you've never seen before. Yeah, that's his privilege to do so. He's the president of the freaking US of A.
You've stated today that the intelligence community's assessment is that Iran's nuclear enrichment program was obliterated and that, quote, there had been no efforts since then to try to rebuild their enrichment capability. Was it the intelligence community's assessment that nevertheless, despite this obliteration, there was a, quote, imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime? Yes or no?
It is not the intelligence community's responsibility to determine what is and is not an imminent threat.
Okay.
So Ossoff, he goes on this for another minute and a half. He's really, really upset because Tulsi Gabbard won't come and bury the president of the United States. He's really, really upset about this. Now, unfortunately, this does come down to something that I covered yesterday that I now feel like I can bring you updates on. This goes to Joe Kent, who was appointed to be a director of the National Counterterrorism Center, which is, it's honest to God, it's a center that sounds way more important than it actually is. It has very little jurisdiction or ability. It is an analysis firm for intelligence data. Now, the reason I was a little careful with how I talked about Joe Kent yesterday, essentially just, again, he resigned, he wrote this big letter, he said, Israel did it, Israel killed my wife. No, it was ISIS that killed your wife. No. And also said a bunch of stuff in this particular resignation letter. He just basically said, I'm throwing my toys out, I'm mad, I'm done. And then just amazingly, instantly had all of these bookings with Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson. Gee whiz, wow. Funny how that works. But in this particular instance, I did not talk about the allegations that he is a leaker. There's a reason why. Joe Kent follows me on social media. He's followed me on social media for quite a while. Back when he was a failed congressman, or I should say failed congressional candidate from Washington State, who ran several times and said whatever the party kind of wanted him to say, and just kind of ran with that. And he started following me based on, I believe, education stuff. And so because he follows me, and I saw a series of allegations, and I also reached out to some friends over at the State Department to get some clarity on this, here's what happened. I reached out to Joe Kent and I said, hey, Joe, I've received word of an allegation today that you had previously leaked information on internal administration issues to the press. I want to make sure, I put sure in all caps, that I have asked you about these allocations before I report on them. Have you ever, during your time in the administration, shared, confirmed, provided context on internal matters to a member of the corporate or independent press, either personally or through proxy? I sent that out and I waited to see if he would respond. He has read the message. He's seen it. The messaging service over on X has confirmed he has read the message. He has said nothing. So, therefore, I am now going to tell you what it is that we know. Over the last couple of months, Joe has been suspected of being one of the individuals that has leaked a series of intelligence data from multiple operational environments to members of the media, either through proxy, either through his wife, who works for, not exactly the most right-leaning of individuals, or either through himself, has basically forwarded a series of documents upon request and has leaked information, so much so that he was removed from a series of intelligence briefings and meetings. However, he fell for one thing. In fact, it is one of the dumbest... guys, we talk about this on the show fairly often. The reason that I am so just aghast when people commit mortgage fraud at these high levels is that on the documents that they sign and fill out in triplicate that are stored by a bunch of different companies and in a bunch of different filing cabinets, they put in big bold letters, I promise I'm not lying about anything on this document, like how many properties I have or whether I'm renting or owning this or what state it's in, that kind of crap. I hate that because it's so easy not to commit that crime. If you're going to commit a crime and you're so stupid that you can get caught super easily, you weren't smart enough to be committing said crime in the first place. This would be one of these cases. Joe got caught the first time because he shared an email that had been slightly altered under suspicion that he was leaking. There you go. Joe Kent fell for the oldest mole hunting trick in the modern book, in which you are sent an email, the person next to you and the next to you and the next to you is sent an email, and there was like one, maybe two things, just teeny tiny things, just a small little that's different. Maybe a piece of punctuation, maybe a word, maybe how a word is spelled, that kind of a thing. That means he was just passing along the whole thing. He wasn't even just saying, all right, here's the gist. So he deserves all of the mockery and all of the scorn. And I do so hope that the minutia of the right and the big, huge, new respect kind of chunk of the left, the CNN, the MS Now people who are lumping him in with Marjorie Taylor Greene as the brave standing up to Trump. Congratulations. You have someone who has essentially shuttled their way out early, threw their toys on the ground because they were caught leaking and they were no longer invited to meetings. And Vice President J.D. Vance, according to the reporting, tried to warn him of this. Said, hey, I would recommend being a little bit nice here. Just be a little friendly. Because if you go out and you make a big stink, this kind of stuff's going to be a reveal. So, hey, you know what? Congratulations. Way to go. So in addition to suggesting that Israel ordered ISIS to kill your wife, making you a very scummy human being, you have now also been caught leaking a lot of information either through your new leftist wife or by your own whatever, self-secretary, whatever. Congratulations to Joe Kent, you Benedict Arnold piece of garbage. So that aside, I want to talk a little bit about the Iran updates. We do cover that particular bit of news here on the show. And so right now, the oil market is still struggling over the Strait of Hormuz situation. The President of the United States has floated a lot of different ideas, as he does, and has essentially, what I believe, is waiting for the troops, for example, in the USS Tripoli, aptly named, to arrive on site and seize Karg Island, in which, in coordination with the likely to be the new regime of Iran, right now the United States and Israel are targeting individual Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps police stations around Tehran in the country. Kurdistan and then, the Kurds, as well as ethnic groups over on the east side of Iran, are likely preparing to rise up. It'll very likely all break at once. And if that happens to be at 2 a.m, well, we'll just have to go live, and, producer Daniel will have to wake me out of a dead sleep to tell me, here we go. And we'll end up covering that, in broad open. But in regard to the Iranian situation right now, there is some international stress, because we are at a point where all oil that was supposed to be going to, for example, China and a couple of other countries here and there, has cut off. It's thrown the international oil market, not to mention the international fertilizer market, into whack. Well, the Trump administration is trying to do something to make, in the short term and in the future long term, this is something that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent had alluded to yesterday, the United States is attempting to do a series of things to level out some of those issues in the short term. So this over from Reuters just before the top of the hour. The United States has now waived a series of shipping regulations to ease fuel and fertilizer deliveries, an attempt to lower the cost of certain goods, especially through this particular crisis. I also do want to clarify a piece of news. We do now have from Shelby Talcott for Semaphore. This is sent to me by by Daily Signal Ohio correspondent Rebecca Downs, good friend of the show. From Shelby Talcott at Semaphore, quote, news, Joe Kent is now under FBI investigation for allegedly leaking classified information. 3 sources tell her. She said, I'm told the investigation predates his departure. Get out the Tony Kinnett was right again jar, boys, girls, and squirrels. I'm sorry, I don't mean to gloat here. She said a 4th source confirms this to me. She doesn't name them. The White House and the FBI are currently declining to comment, which means, yeah, they're investigating him. So congrats to Tucker Carlson, who's having him on his show. I mean, I guess after saying, wow, the CIA is investigating me for speaking to Iran, now you have a guy who's leaking things and is under investigation from the FBI. It turns out if you FA, you do often FO. So regarding the Iranian regime, who is now on their 233rd leader in the last week, the argument that is being made by the Joe Kents, the CNNs, the MS Now, the Tucker Carlson, the Megyn Kellys, the online influencers enjoying their very last gasp of breath here, they're suggesting that the right is deeply divided. Oh, so deeply. It's cut in half, it is. MAGA civil war. Don't please ignore the Democrat civil war and Chuck Schumer, who's being ratioed by his own party on social media. The real civil war is on the right. Yeah, MAGA no longer supports Donald Trump. He's betrayed them. He has. There's just one problem. People saying that are retarded. They are retarded. Not just the broad online scraping data, but the blanket out there in front of you polls themselves. Don't take my word for it. Harry Enton, CNN.
Yeah, sometimes you look at the polling data and there are numbers that just jump off the screen at you, and this is one of those. Because just take a look here. MAGA GOP view of Trump. Approve 100%.
Oh, gee, wow.
100%. If you are a member of MAGA and the GOP, you approve of Donald John Trump. 0% say that they disapprove. You don't have to be a mathematical genius to know you can't go higher than 100%. He is the 1972 Miami Dolphins.
Yeah. I mean, and by the way, Republican support is currently growing in the middle of the Iranian stuff, in the middle of it. Because you were promised World War III, they were going to sink the whole Navy. And that boots were going to be like boots. We were going to invade Mahabad in the Iranian West. And it was going to be George W. And we were going to send Steve Witkoff there to set up a new government ourselves. Nope. Now the president of the United States is essentially telling NATO, who has not come, because again, we came to NATO's defense regarding Ukraine. We shipped over a bunch of things and said, yeah, hey, here you go. And we'll also ratchet some economic things up for you. Trump said, hey, it'd be cool if you could come do the same with the Strait of Hormuz. After all, you're buying some of this crap, so why don't you, come on out and, protect the stuff you're buying from some of these other Middle Eastern countries sailing their oily boats through the Strait of Hormuz? And NATO said no. And a bunch of other nations said no. And so the President of the United States, and this answers a mail time question that we'll get into here in a little bit, as to the President of the United States, should we leave NATO? Well, we'll talk about that here in just a couple of minutes. I do want to point out one thing that does give me the giggles. Just like Costa Rica expelling the Cuban embassy, Qatar has now expelled all Iranian diplomats from the country following tonight's attack. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, Iran, because they are in the very last throes of any effectiveness in the regime, are now turning on who were considered their pseudo-allies. They are trying so desperately now just to raise oil prices around the world as high as they can to somehow get that to stop Trump in the short term. So they are trying to throw all of the remaining drones and missiles, all of the missile tracking maps that kind of leave long-term data up of where certain amounts of missiles are fired. Now, again, we're only down to like 10 missiles per day now, where at first we were at 100. All of those remaining missiles, they send one to Israel. They send a couple of drones to the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad, and then they send everything else now towards Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia, trying to hit as much as they can regarding the Iranian oil, or excuse me, I should say the Qatari oil and natural gas infrastructure in the country. So this is footage that we have from tonight's attack. Now, if you see that orange fireball over to the left, it's not supposed, the ground, the oil refinery, it's not supposed to do that. I don't know if you knew that about oil refineries. That is an Iranian attack directly on Qatar, who was doing a lot of the funding of the Iranian regime. So Qatar has now, again, expelled all foreign diplomats from Iran following that attack. Additionally, these gas facilities in Ras Laffan, which is the place in Qatar where it was attacked, Qatar is also expelling the military attaché and the security attaché at the Iranian embassy in Qatar. So Costa Rica, screw your embassy, Cuba, get out of here. Qatar, screw your embassy, Iran, get out of here. See ya. You can't park there. I mean, it's pretty wild to see. It really, it's pretty wild to see how things are going. When I was told the walls are closing in.
I believe this is the beginning of the end.
I do too.
It's really the beginning of the end.
The beginning of the end.
He may be feeling the walls closing in on him.
Nope, none of that at all. None of that at all. Now, the Qatari Foreign Ministry has also announced that it will take further measures and leaning into the further measures, the particular Arabic word that was used here, and then also in Farsi, which allows kind of a slight modifier in the noun itself that doesn't quite translate. The word measures there means a measure of force, meaning a military measure, if the Iranian aggression continues. Now, again, there's a ton of other war-style stuff that we could cover on this. Regarding the claim that Iran was no threat, you don't really need me to show you this, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. From CIA Director John Radcliffe, Senator John Cornyn asking this today. You can kind of hear in how Cornyn is asking these questions that he definitely has the primary on his mind, the runoff election. But anyway, here is that from one of the committees today.
The head of the National Counterterrorism Center resigned, saying that Iran did not represent an imminent threat to the United States. Is there anything to indicate that Iran had ceased in its nuclear ambitions or in its desire to continue to build ballistic missiles capable of threatening American troops and allies in the Middle East?
Senator, no. In fact, the intelligence reflects the contrary.
So you disagree with Mr. Kent?
I do.
I would think any fair-minded assessment of the situation, even based on open sources, would reflect the danger the regime poses to the United States.
Now, let's move over a little bit away from kind of the situation in Iran. We've got so much news tonight. I know it's 8:21. I know that we've got far more. I do want to touch, before we get out of this on the last of the committee today. Senator Mark Wayne Mullen. So Rand Paul of Kentucky, who essentially his entire personality now is just... he's very, very mad that Mark Wayne Mullen once said that Rand Paul was acting like such a child. He can kind of see why his neighbor once attacked him. It's a crass comment, sure. But also, you're a man. Calm down. Take a deep breath. Either way, this exploded today. Why? With friends like these, who needs enemies? Rand Paul on the new nomination, the new nominee, I should say, for the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, I didn't know the extent of your damage. When the phone call was made, I made it to you and I tried to talk to you.
There you go. When I told you earlier that these things don't actually happen in committee, they happen via phone call. Mullen says, look, I know you didn't like me, making that joke, so I called you. And then I called you again. And then I called you one more time. Then I called you sister. You didn't answer. She didn't answer. Nobody's answering. I called a Hezbollah beeper. I heard a lot of static. I don't know. I mean, what do you want? And you're going to get the tut-tuttery from Rand Paul, who's going to stroke his libertarian ego.
You didn't engage at all. In fact, you said, get your paperwork in. It's got to be 3 days in between.
You offered no apology.
Sir?
You didn't say sorry. It's not what you said. It's how you said it. Where's the pearls? You didn't say sorry.
You offer no apology today.
You offer no how dare you? You said that you understood the guy who punched me. How dare you? You wound me, sir.
And no regrets.
No regrets.
Haven't heard the word apologize, haven't heard the word regret, haven't heard I misspoke and it was heated and I made a mistake.
Actually, you're going to sit here and think about what you did. And I'm going to flip through my thesaurus that I borrowed from Jasmine Crockett in the house. Where the apologize, sorry, shucksy doodles, my deepest condolences. Oh, just...
any of those words.
Sir, actually, it wasn't heated, and I'm not apologizing for pointing out your character.
Good. So you're jolly well fine, and you want the American public and the people up here to vote, that may or may not vote for you, to know that you supported the felonious...
Felonia. You supported the felony. What are we doing? Again, it's political theater. When I tell you that committees are political theater, this is what I'm talking about. None of this matters. All of these people that sit in the Senate committee hearing, Rand Paul wants this job. He wants this job right here. Now, you could not pay me all of the libertarian doubloons in the world to run for the United States Senate. You could not. Ugh, no, thank you. How about no? But these senators and representatives, they desperately want to be pundits. They want to be on camera, and they want to impress you by how righteously outraged they are. But then you have Rand Paul, who's not getting any legislation through the Senate, who's just being a whiny goofball, just like Ro Khanna or Thomas Massey. That is when they're not, actually inviting actual Epstein co-conspirators to the State of the Union to show off. So there you go. I mean, well done. Exciting stuff. Now, later on, of course, the cameras all gathered around because he was going to spill the tea. They're like, so you going to vote for him? As if we all didn't know the answer to this already. So here's Rand Paul very much enjoying being surrounded by people who care for once.
Planning on voting for this nominee?
I think there are anger issues. I think there's a lack of contrition, both about the violence that was perpetrated on me, really the violent episode he was involved in the Senate committee where he's told the media, frankly, that he doesn't regret it. He's also told the media.
This kind of smarmy gaslighting. I love it. I do. It reminds, so little side story you didn't ask for here. There was a girl that I dated in college, really nice girl, and her parents did not approve. They ran this Christian camp in Wisconsin. And he did not like, and told me to my face, that he didn't like that my parents were divorced. And he said I had an attitude. I know, right? And he called my own pastor here in Indiana to explain why he thought I had serious character issues. Now, I'm not one of like the argue with your, the girl you're dating's parents kind of guys. But that was really, really, really silly. And as my pastor told me later, I think that he laughed at the camp director in Wisconsin for saying silly, nonsensical things and outrage because I had the gall to date his daughter. And ended up, she's a very lovely person. There are a lot of lovely people in that particular family, but this kind of gaslighting nonsense, no. No, you don't. You don't have to do that. You're not impressing anybody. That kind of spilling the tea goofball garbage. No, Mullen will likely get through. Now, I do believe, watching Mullen in that hearing today, he brought to himself the disappointed parent maneuver. I like it. If he runs the Department of Homeland Security like he ran himself today in that particular hearing, and don't get me wrong, I mean, he did some of the same stuff that, a lot of people do. They get out there in his intro's opening statement. It's, I can't imagine as a young boy from this state that I'd ever be here. I mean, you had this stuff, his opening statement.
Opportunity. It is a humbling experience. A kid from Westville, Oklahoma, that grew up with a dad that worked hard.
So I appreciate this, but also I don't really care for this either. This is political theater from the other side. Now, it is more reserved, but it's the whole John Kasich, like, my dad was a mailman. Like, I got you, dude. Like, a lot of people in this country come from very humble places. That's excellent. That's awesome. I love it. That's very, very good. I get tired of it when I hear it from Tim Scott. I get tired of it when I hear it. I don't care who it is. I get it. A lot of us grew up in broken homes, or we had families that worked hard, that we grew up poor, or that we grew up in rough circumstances. Again, I'm happy. That's not why I want you to be the Secretary of Homeland Security. But again, he's not doing all of this in a super emotional state. He's just getting this out of the way, and then he gets into his opening statement and why he wants to be the Secretary of Homeland Security.
He set the work example for all of us. And all my families, and my siblings, we all work hard, and I'm proud of the family we have. But to say that a kid with a bad speech impediment would one day sit up here in front of you.
I'm going to skip.
And I was 19, she agreed to marry me each day. I work hard to make the 280,000 employees at DHS with the 22 agencies that's underneath me proud.
There it is. Yeah. Yeah, that's the stuff. Again, I get it. You get up there, you got to thank your parents and where you're from. I hear you. Respect that. You got to thank your wife. Again, great. Respect that. I have now skipped 2 minutes and 39 seconds. Now, into this statement, he's like, hey, I'm going to represent the employees well. These are the agencies. You can see there he is implying in there, I've done my research on all of the agencies in the DHS and how many employees that we'll have. We should be paying attention to this. Hey, I like that so far. All right, good. Now we're to the meat and bones.
I'll show them somebody that no one will outwork. I'll work beside them every single day.
Good.
To not just secure a homeland, to bring peace of mind and confidence to the agency.
Now there you go. And for the average American out there who may have not followed this particular situation as closely, the reason that this matters rather muchly is that Corey Lewandowski, the man whore of Kristi Noem, they really made the Department of Homeland Security a, quote, living hell, end quote. Member of the DHS, to me, in a statement. And unfortunately, the law enforcement veterans, who Mark Wayne Mullen gets along with a lot better, were not really allowed to do their jobs and instead had to go do silly, goofy nonsense stuff. Mullen's making it clear, I want peace of mind. We're going to let those who are skilled and talented do what they do best. We're not going to interfere. We're not going to go shoot a bunch of pretty little frilly cowboy hat videos. No. I'm going to do the job. That's good. That's good. That's what I wanted. That's what Americans want. Calm airline pilot, disappointed parent. There you have it.
My goal in 6 months is that we're not in the lead story every single day.
Yes. Yes. Quoth the Raven, let's freaking go. That's what I'm looking for. That's what Americans are after. Because Democrats can't attack that. So you have Rand Paul going, you didn't apologize, and I the boombox outside your house, I waited for you. No, none of that crap. We're not doing it. The age of outraged influencers is over. It is done. And it's done for a few reasons. And I'm going to explain why, because we're going to get into some mail time here. I know we're at the 8:30 mark, and I'm kind of supposed to be done, but there's just so much news. I haven't even talked about Gavin Newsom's bridge to freaking nowhere yet. But I do want to cover this regarding the arguments, the pearl clutching, the freaking out, the lunacy, and the age of the influencer dying, because it is dying. What you're witnessing right now, just like the Iranian regime is going through its last gasp, the Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens outrage influencer age is coming to an end. Americans are tired of it. We've seen it. I got you. I've seen every version of it. I've seen all the sequels. All right. Saw it in theaters. Kind of tired of it at this point. Now, there is no better case to explain this than in the Chicago 9th Congressional, Kat Abu-Ghazaleh. So Kat Abu-Ghazaleh, you may remember, is the young lady who got her keister absolutely ram, slam, jam, thank you, ma'am, booted onto the ground after she obstructed federal officials. But I'm not going to tell you about how this turned out from my voice here today in March. I'm going to share with you a slightly older clip from the show a couple of months ago when I brought this back up to y'all's attention and made a certain prediction. So, without further ado, and here we go, just as a reminder, boom, there it is again. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Just to be clear, on the prediction side of things, there's no way this goober wins a primary. There's no way. There's no way voters are just going to pivot from, Jan Schakowsky's seat for Illinois' 9th over to her. Some little Media Matters influencer who spends all day yelling on Instagram and TikTok, screaming about the billionaires and the genocide and ICE. Oh, they're so mean and scary. Oh, it's so horrible. That's not going to win. This will be the latest in the long line of influencers who gets canned by the candidate with the most basic, normal name and somewhat normal behavior possible. Now, hang on. Notice that my prediction here, I said somewhat normal behavior. Now, Daniel Biss is no treasure, but he does have a normal sounding name. And although he believes a lot of crazy progressive things, he communicates them sounding like less of a crying little influencer girly pop than Kate Abu-Ghazaleh. I'm going to keep playing this, though, because there is one other prediction on this that I'm just really proud of. That's who's going to defeat her. Who are the other primary candidates in this? Was that Daniel Bliss and Laura Fine? I'm going to roll the dice and say, Daniel Bliss is walking away with that. Now, it was Daniel Biss, but I was reading at the time like an initial bit of coverage back when I think Daniel had announced his candidacy. But you're going to get polls from like right up until the day of the election saying that Kat Abu-Ghazaleh is like ahead in the race. And this is going to be it. Finally, the influencer left-wing crowd is coming out to find her own. And then she's going to get stomped in the primary. She did. She absolutely did. There were polls that came out yesterday that said, she's leading in mail-in ballots. She's going to pull it off. She's going to pull out the greatest upset in history. And then she didn't. And she lost. And the mayor of Evanston is now going to be running for that particular seat. Now, another warning for Democrats is that there was a lot of Republican turnout. There was more Republican turnout for this primary in Illinois than really they should probably be comfortable with seeing. Now, am I saying it's going to flip Illinois? No, I'm not saying that. What I am saying, though, is that for those who believed a couple of months ago that the midterms were set, done, solved, no problem at all, no, not at all. The age of influencer garbage is coming to a close, and it's coming to a close in quite a few different places. We'll talk about some more of that later. I do want to share the Gavin Newsom story with you because it's a real shame. I have so many cool things to talk about regarding like where their focus is and why it's going to screw them over, but we just don't have that time tonight. I will share the Gavin Newsom story, so we'll have to save the Tim Walz thing for tomorrow. Tim Walz is losing it over data centers. He's saying that Trump and the data centers he's mad. Even though Tim Walz won't let new power plants at all be built in Minnesota unless it's a cheap windmill that you could buy at Party City. Anyway, Gavin Newsom is getting absolutely roasted because he funded and was so proud of this $114 million bridge. Now, what kind of a bridge is it? Like a pedestrian walkway bridge? A couple of hot girls playing bridge? No, absolutely not. Instead, this is a $114 million bridge to freaking nowhere. It's a wildlife bridge. Yeah, the $114 million cougar and butterfly bridge. And no, I don't just mean kind of really, good-looking older ladies. No, I don't mean that kind of cougar. I mean like the wild cougar and butterflies, natural cohabitants. See, they'd have this bridge so that they could walk to the beach if they wanted to. Or something. I'm really not joking. Here is Beth Pratt Again, after years, this bridge to nowhere has gone, shocker, nowhere. I know, I too am amazed. Here she is talking about the exciting progress here, and also trying to blame Trump because they can't build a bridge in California.
When we started stage 1 and we're waiting to start stage 2, the world changed beneath us, though.
Every middle-aged Democrat blonde lady, they all sound and look the exact same. They all act the same kind of entitled. Middle-aged Republican ladies do not age like this. They don't. And in fact, they are happy and are involved in either their family or their community or their church enough that when Republican ladies age, they age quite nicely. Now, I'm not going to name names because I really don't want my wife to kill me. But in this particular instance, the left ladies that end up coming out with stuffed cougars and complaining about Donald Trump about their bridge to, again, nowhere, it's not looking too good.
This spring, construction costs increased considerably. And although we were holding reserves to finish construction, all those are exhausted at this point because
she had enough money for her little pink high vision safety vest and her stuffed cougar, but they can't finish the Wildlife Reserve Preserve Bridge because, I know this is going to shock you, California blew all of their money on the project again. Whoa, day ending in Y, huh?
tariffs, inflation, and so many other factors impacting construction projects, not just ours. So we need your help one more time to get us to the finish line and help us build back those reserves.
Yes, I love it. Like Mondani, we have no money. Give me money. Money me. Give me money. I want money. Money me. Give me money. And here we go. It's the same coast to coast. Socialism sucks.
So that we can ensure that we finalize construction by November, so we can all cut that ribbon together.
There it is. See, there it is. See that weird, awkward skid mark? It's a land bridge for aminals. See? So the cougar and the butterfly, you cross the bridge and then they kiss right there in the center. It's going to be real pretty. It's going to be real good. It's going to be great. Of course, animals aren't going to use that. And by the way, as a former science teacher who taught ecology to middle school students, land bridges like that, those human artificial constructions, guess what? Animals don't use them. And I love it. They call it the cougar and butterfly bridge. Guys, I don't know if you know this. Butterflies can fly. Butterflies are not stopped by interstates. They're not. Oh my God. Oh. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Leader of the 2028 election stuff, Gavin Newsom, the bridge to nowhere, huge success. I mean, look at it. Look at it in its majesty, the CGI rendering of where it currently is. Now you'll notice the slope right now. So again, you saw the artist rendering before. This is the rendering of what it looks like now. They have built a very large square sandbox over the interstate. Now that's exciting. That's some thrilling stuff right there. That's good. So congratulations, many mucho congratulations to California and the suckfest that it is. So that said, now I do want to cover a few on the mail time thing. So again, if you enjoy the show, you want to throw a question in, every show's got a little, mail time, kind of a segment or of those sorts. So without further ado here, mail time. Mail time. Mail time.
On the Tony Kinnett Cast.
Best way to get those questions in our description, there's a link to a Discord chat that we have where we chat off the show and share memes that probably should get me canceled. And you can share things there. That's where we go to first. You can throw these chats into the YouTube chat. Absolutely. Not likely that we'll see them. Excuse me. Not likely that we'll see them because it's a great problem to have. There are now so many comments that are flooding through. It's difficult for the producers to keep up with them. Great problem to have. We want you to keep chatting. But just letting you know why we're not pulling all of the questions if we miss one. So I do want to get into a few of those. First, from David, he asks if we should leave NATO. If a lot of countries abandoning us, if, for example, NATO says, well, this is your war, the United States, we're not involved. You know what? You should really go take care of this one. Let me see how he phrased it specifically here, so I don't. If the United Kingdom is no longer an ally, if they're subs, carry our Trident II D5 nuclear missiles, should we not take them back from the United Kingdom as well? So basically, should the United States essentially pull back? I'm going to suggest that the President of the United States should continue to threaten it, and that the United States should just go ahead and start the process of leaving more of the European defense to Europe. Yeah, I mean, if they're going to, talk big smack here, and we're going to pay for their defense so that they can all provide crappy healthcare, well, then how about no? How about we just don't do that? If Germany is so uber strong, they can handle Ukraine's defense. Go ahead. Yeah, I mean, again, if the United States asks for, hey, you guys have boats, you, the Europeans, have boats coming through this strait, you should come escort them, and they go, nuh-uh, okay, well, how about no? I do agree with that. Now, as to, requesting stuff back from the UK, I don't think that you can necessarily do that. In this particular instance, there are a couple of other things that, that the Senate would have to get involved with. Well, you saw Rand Paul. Not necessarily. Keir Starmer is fashioning for himself quite the noose, though. It will not forever persist in that manner, though they do import as many migrants as they can to tip the scales. So beyond that, from Cyan Star over on the Discord, there's something I don't understand about my state. New Hampshire has had a Republican governor for the past 10 years and a supermajority in both houses in the state, I believe, for the most, if not all the time. How is it that we have zero conservative representation in Washington? I don't get it. I believe the last House representative was 2016 and the Senate was 2009. The answer to that particular question is that just having an R on the ballot doesn't mean that you're going to have great candidates. Also, Republicans have been really bad at putting forward good congressional candidates. Once again, I give you Carrie Lake. You don't have to put forward the wackadoodle insane person smacking themselves in the head with the Acme hammer. You don't have to do that. And I said this the same with the Georgian Senate elections. I've said this since in several other key elections. You don't have to get out there. And when Matt Gaetz said that he was going to get out there and do some other kinds of running before the soliciting sex from the minor for braces, that kind of, kneecapped him. Running the loons, you don't have to do that. Now, New Hampshire hasn't just run loons on the Republican side of the aisle, to be fair. Congressional momentum and state momentum are two different things. New Hampshire's Republican Party really struggles, and they're very disorganized. There's a lot of other facets that kind of go there too. Up in the Northeast, though, in general, more moderate Republicans who are kind of the corporatist establishmentarians are more likely to be those that are in power. Mike Lawler from New York is a really good example of this. So if you're looking for like the down-home kind of Southern or Midwestern conservative, they're not moving to New Hampshire. No one wakes up one fine morning in Indiana or Kentucky and goes, you know where I want to move? New Hampshire. That's not a thing. So that's kind of the answer. And I'm not trying to be kind of rough with you on the answer there, but that's my take on it. So that per side of things. From Ink and Rock, Tony, why in, I'm guessing, these committee hearings or these press rallies and things like that, why can't the press just raise their hand to ask questions? The short answer to that is that doesn't get you called on. I've been in these press gaggles before. Now, I raise my hand and then ask the question, and I have a loud carrying voice, and I can often get a question in. It's a free-for-all. There is no waiting in line nice and kindly to get questions and be picked. Sometimes the question is good, and so you often do have press that are shouting over each other, asking things. Now, for example, the White House press briefing room, at the beginning, you do in fact have some more of the hand raising. And Caroline will actually pivot to particular individuals. We'll have to see who replaces her when she's on maternity leave. My money would probably be on Tricia McLaughlin. In that case, Tricia follows kind of that same pattern. But sometimes when it's a gaggle, you got to get out there and throw a couple of arms. So this is something, for example, when Donald Trump Jr. came to Shelbyville, Indiana, and I traveled down that day to, see that campaign rally. This is during 2024. Again, name coming up again, Adam Wren from Politico and I stood there while a lot of the other local affiliate media did their questions. And the reason that I don't wait for people to raise their hand and get called on is they ask really sucky questions. Pivoting over to RTV6 in Indiana or Channel 13, guess what? They ask really awful, stupid, dumb questions that have nothing to do with anything. And so I, who happen to like my questions, I'm going to get my question in. And this would be kind of the cutthroat, reporter world in Chicago. You got to get your question in. You got to get your question in real quick there, Madge. I mean, that's the kind of environment that persists in the press. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Here's a little bit of dirt that you may like. There in the right-wing correspondence in the White House, there is an attitude of like pretty cutthroat nastiness among a lot of them. So several of the White House correspondences from various right-wing outlets have told me before and after some of the interviews and such that we've had that some of those individuals are just straight up awful and they treat other people terribly. So journalism is kind of a cutthroat world. I mean, you even see this in jest though. So even, co-allies who I praise from time to time, I hold a level of disdain for. There was one particular commentator, I should say, one of the many of us who has the first name, last name show, who I do mention quite a bit, that I have a very long-standing feud with because he steals clips and other things without crediting who they're from. Like, you'll post something and he'll just change the wording on your tweet slightly and send it out from his own self. Now, to be fair, and to protect the names of the innocent and the guilty here, Betty Johnson doesn't do that very much anymore. But there's still a little of that kind of, it's cutthroat stuff. I'd rather the viewers be here. Now, I also don't mind that you go and watch other things other places. And I also try to shout out other shows quite often because I also watch a lot of other shows. I think you should go watch the Ruthless podcast. I think it's a really good product. Also, a lot of other shows here and there that I really enjoy. And I try to shout them out when we talk to them, shout out commentators that I like because, you should get your stuff from a variety of sources. That's that kind of my kind of take there. All right, I'd say that's a good end of things. We've had a couple of questions about merch and mugs and things. I don't know why you would want that, but for those of you who do, I'll say stay tuned. We'll talk about that soon. We'll talk about Tim Walz and the AI stuff, more on the international side of things. Some more information, Tulsi Gabbard on the suspect in the Michigan synagogue attack. Way more on this tomorrow. So you have to come back 7 p.m. Eastern, youtube.com/Daily Signal. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Y'all, take care.
ACC is a national grassroots advocacy organization dedicated to mobilizing young people in favor of pro-market, pro-innovation environmental ideas.
So we are in hundreds of communities across the country with tens of thousands of young conservative members.
I'm here because I am a conservative environmentalist. I think for a long time, conservatives have not come to the table.
But what truly unites all of these young people is a shared belief that the ideas of freedom and free enterprise are the single best way to solve our environmental problems.
While there's still work to be done, there are Republicans who want to come to the table and engage on climate in good faith.
We are building the conservative environmental movement, but we're doing it by involving everybody.